This isn't your average hotel tale." "You know where to go," Edward Blake barked, his voice slicing through the polished hum of the luxury lobby he didn't own, but commanded like a king. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, sized up the lone black man at the counter and dismissed him without a second thought. No ID check, no room availability, just a swift call to security. It was his signature move, honed over years of gatekeeping. What Edward didn't know was the man he'd just banished wasn't seeking a bed. He owned the damn building. Marcus Kane, CEO, visionary, billionaire, wasn't here to check in. He was here to expose a truth about power and the cost of letting men like Edward decide who belongs. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment with where you're reading from and hit that subscribe button. Marcus Kane sat alone in his penthouse office, the city's pulse a faint hum beyond towering windows. Soft light spilled through gauzy curtains, painting shadows across walnut floors that smelled of espresso and ambition. His phone buzzed, emails pinged, but his focus was razor-sharp on the tablet in his hands. The report was a gut punch. Slipping guest ratings, spiking staff turnover, and 2 complaints in 3 months at his flagship downtown hotel. Not a crisis. Yet. But Marcus hadn't built an empire by ignoring cracks before they split wide open. He leaned back, fingers steepled, the silence thick with resolve. He could have sent a team, executives, auditors, faceless surveyors, but their reports would be sanitized, safe. Marcus craved raw truth, what guests felt, what staff hid. He needed to slip into his own creation and touch the rot himself. In the corner, he opened a sleek armoire, bypassing tailored suits for a navy hoodie and dark jeans. The Rolex stayed behind, glinting in a dish. He grabbed a worn leather duffel from his college days when ambition outran his wallet. The mirror showed no trace of the Forbes cover star, just a man who could vanish into a crowd. Perfect. The city blurred past in a hired car, jazz humming low, as Marcus watched tourists in suits collide on the streets. His hotel loomed ahead, a glass and steel titan, award-winning, star-studded. He'd walked its halls before, greeted like royalty. Not today. He stepped onto the curb, duffel in hand, hood up against the breeze. The valet didn't glance over. The doorman didn't budge. Marcus pulled the heavy glass door himself, stepping into a chilled lobby where marble gleamed like ice and chandeliers dripped light. At the curved front desk stood Edward Blake, manager, his name tag gleaming above a pressed suit, his gaze already narrowing. Marcus approached with quiet swagger, a man who belonged but wouldn't announce it. Edward's eyes flicked over him, hoodie, duffel, no flash, and his lips twitched downward, a silent verdict. Marcus set his bag down, leaned on the counter, and waited. The younger receptionist hesitated, but Edward cut in with a murmured word, and she froze. Marcus didn't flinch. He was the test, and this glittering palace he'd built was about to show its true colors. "Good afternoon," Marcus said, voice smooth as velvet, warm but firm. "I'd like a room. One night." The receptionist opened her mouth, but Edward stepped forward, his smile a thin blade. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" "No," Marcus replied, unfazed. "I'm in town and thought I'd stay here. Treat myself." Edward's smile tightened. "We recommend booking ahead. This location's usually full, and our rates aren't exactly impulsive." "I know the rates," Marcus said, his tone steady, eyes locked. "I'm good for it." Edward's gaze flicked to the duffel again. "We've had issues with walk-ins lately, people who don't quite grasp the standards we uphold." The words landed like a velvet-gloved punch. Marcus's posture didn't shift, but his gaze sharpened, cutting through the pretense. "I'd like to see if you have a room." The receptionist glanced at her screen, but Edward raised a hand. "We're fully booked," he said, staring Marcus down. Tech conference in town. Not a single suite left." "Interesting," Marcus said, voice low, deliberate. "I checked your site 10 minutes ago. Junior suites, executive rooms, even a penthouse, all available." Edward's face cooled, his smile a ghost. "The site lags. Our internal system's the truth, and I'm telling you, we're full." Marcus leaned in, just enough, his voice now a quiet blade. "Mind checking that system?" "I'll wait." Edward didn't budge. "I'm being polite, sir, but if you can't afford a room, that's okay. We don't shame anyone for their situation, but loitering in the lobby isn't allowed." "Loitering?" Marcus's tone was calm, but the word hung like a guillotine. "I asked to book a room." "And I said we're booked," Edward snapped, loud enough to turn heads in the lounge. A couple on a velvet sofa glanced over. A bellhop froze mid-step. "If you want affordable options, I can point you elsewhere," Edward added, his voice dripping with false kindness. "I didn't ask for cheaper hotels," Marcus said, each word deliberate. "I asked about this one." Edward's eyes narrowed. "We both know what's happening here. You don't need to pretend. This place is out of your league, and we've had issues with people using our lobby to linger. It's not personal." "Isn't it?" Marcus's voice dropped, heavy with intent. "Tell me what about me says I don't belong." Edward sighed, theatrical, patience feigned. "Sir, our clientele is refined. You walk in with a hoodie, a duffel, no assistant, no suit." "No whiteness," Marcus cut in, his tone a quiet thunderclap. Edward froze. "Don't make this about race." "I didn't," Marcus said, eyes unyielding. "You did the moment you saw me." The lobby seemed to hold its breath. The receptionist stared at her screen, invisible. The bellhop shuffled away. Edward gestured to security. "Escort this gentleman out. He's disturbing the peace." "Disturbing?" Marcus said, voice steady as granite. "For wanting to pay for a room?" "You've been warned," Edward said, turning away. "We're done." Marcus eyed the approaching guards, one grizzled, one young, both uneasy. He nodded, lifted his duffel, and walked toward the exit, his calm a silent roar. No shouting, no scene, just a man carving every detail into memory. Edward's smirk, the staff's silence, the weight of a lobby that had failed its own promise. Outside, the wind bit harder, the city's rhythm indifferent. Marcus didn't rush. He walked, blocks blurring past, neon signs, chattering tourists, baristas on breaks, his mind dissecting the encounter like a surgeon. Edward hadn't just misjudged him. He'd revealed a truth, one Marcus had hoped his empire had outgrown. This wasn't a one-off. It was a symptom. At his riverfront penthouse, Marcus shed the hoodie, the duffel, and stepped into his study, the city's glow a backdrop to his resolve. He opened his laptop, pulled up the hotel's internal portal, and confirmed what he already knew. Rooms aplenty, just as he'd said. He exhaled, fingers steepled, and began to plot, not for revenge, but for reckoning. The next morning, Marcus returned, a different man. No hoodie, no anonymity. A slate-gray suit hugged his frame, sharp as a blade, a silk tie catching light like a warning. His coat flowed with quiet power, his presence commanding without effort. He stepped from a black car, alone, and entered the lobby like a storm held in check. He didn't rush to the desk. He prowled the space, eyes sweeping the marble, the chandeliers, the staff moving with practiced grace. It was still beautiful, but now he saw the cracks, the performative warmth, the guarded glances. Edward stood at the desk, charming a blonde guest in designer heels, his smile a masterclass in selective hospitality. Another guest approached, scarf flashing a luxury logo, and Edward lit up. "Mr. Alden, always a pleasure. Your usual suite's ready. Upgraded view this time." The man nodded, tossing his coat like a king, and Edward was already typing, eager. servile. Marcus waited, timing his approach. When Edward's eyes met his, there was no recognition, just a flicker of appraisal, the suit registering, but the face forgotten. Marcus stopped at the counter, silent, letting Edward fill the void. "Good morning," Edward said, voice slick as oil. "Welcome to Kane and Crown. How can I assist?" "I'd like a room," Marcus said, his tone a calm challenge. "Of course." Edward's fingers danced over the keyboard. "One night or multiple?" "One night. Corner suite, if available." Edward's smile wavered, his voice tightening. "We're fully booked in suites. Tech conventions got us packed." "You're sure?" Marcus's eyes didn't waver. Edward nodded, smile thin. "Completely. I could check our sister properties. But here? No chance tonight." Marcus let the lie hang, his silence a mirror. Edward shifted, a crack in his polish, as if some buried memory stirred but couldn't surface. "Are you here for the convention, mister?" "No," Marcus said, voice soft but final. "Just passing through." Edward's pause lingered too long. "Well, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. If we had space, I'd be happy to help." Marcus's smile was a shadow, cold and brief. "Thanks for your time." He turned, leaving no ripple, no protest, just the weight of truth trailing behind him. The test was over. The verdict was clear. Late afternoon light bathed Marcus's office, gold slicing through glass, catching the sharp angles of steel and wood. He stood at the window, a glass of water turning slowly in his hand, the city sprawling below like a chessboard. Clara Reed entered, heels clicking, tablet glowing, her eyes reading him before she spoke. "Personnel files," she said, voice crisp. "Edward Blake, manager, 4 years with us, promoted 18 months ago. Clean record? 2 commendations." Marcus set the glass down, the click loud in the quiet. "No complaints. No flags." "None," Clara confirmed, watching him. "But you've seen something." "I've seen what he does when he thinks he's untouchable," Marcus said, voice low, lethal. "And I know arrogance like that doesn't learn from a slap. It learns when it's blindsided." Clara's lips curved, not a smile, but understanding. "You want him to think he's climbing." "I want him walking into a trap thinking it's a throne," Marcus said, settling into his chair, hands folded. "Bring him here Monday. Call it a guest experience initiative, hint at a regional role, maybe international. Make it irresistible." Clara tapped her screen. "I'll make it glow. He'll clear his calendar." "And when he leaves?" she asked, eyes curious. Marcus's smile was a flicker, dark and sure. "He'll wonder how he lost it all." Clara nodded, already drafting the invite, copying the regional director for authenticity. She paused at the door. "You're playing this close." "I'm not playing," Marcus said, gaze steady. "I'm protecting what I built." Across the city, Edward read the email in his cramped office, a grin splitting his face. The words, leadership, advancement, senior dialogue, were catnip to his ego. He didn't question the sudden summons, didn't wonder why no one had called. He saw his name in lights, his ascent secured. The man in the hoodie was a ghost, irrelevant. He clicked, accept, straightened his tie, and leaned back, dreaming of Monday's triumph. The conference room at headquarters was a study in power. Glass walls, black oak, a screen looping the Kane and Crown crest. Edward arrived early, suit sharp, pocket square crisp, his stride buoyant with expectation. He'd pictured applause, a panel of suits, a new title. Instead, he found one man at the table's end, flipping through a folder with quiet intensity. Marcus looked up, his nod polite but cold. "Mr. Blake, thanks for coming." Edward faltered, then recovered, flashing a salesman's smile, hand extended. "Thank you for having me." Truly honored. Marcus's handshake was brief, his gesture to the chair final. Sit. Edward settled, adjusting his tie, searching Marcus's face for warmth. Nothing. Just a steady, unreadable gaze. You've managed the downtown Crown for over a year, Marcus said, voice conversational but precise. How's it been? Edward leaned in, eager. A privilege. High standards, discerning guests, but I run a tight ship. Improved margins, cut turnover. Impressive, Marcus said, nodding. What's the most important quality in your role? Consistency, Edward shot back. Guests expect elegance, safety. That means reading the room, spotting trouble before it starts. Marcus tilted his head. Let's test that. Say a man walks in, late afternoon, no reservation, African American, alone. Wants a room. Your move? Edward chuckled, thinking it a game. Follow procedure. ID, payment, check availability. But context matters. Some walk-ins aren't. Serious. Meaning? Marcus's voice was a velvet trap. Edward's chuckle faded. Just experience. You can tell when someone's out of place. Out of place, Marcus echoed, the words a quiet blade. Right, Edward said, missing the edge. You protect the vibe. Not everyone belongs. Marcus leaned forward, hands clasped. What if you're wrong? Edward blinked. Part of the job. You make calls. Sometimes you miss. And if that call's biased? Edward shifted, sensing a shift, but not its depth. I'm not racist. I treat everyone the same. I don't believe you, Marcus said, voice hardening. Because people who treat everyone the same don't say those people when they think they're safe. Edward froze, his smile gone. A flicker of dread sparked. Have we met? Marcus slid a photo from the folder. Lobby footage, hoodie, duffel, Edward's dismissive gesture frozen in time. Edward stared, then looked up, fear dawning. You. I gave you 2 chances, Marcus said, voice low, unyielding. You failed both. Not because of policy, but because you judged me before I spoke. My appearance wasn't wealth to you. I didn't know, Edward stammered. That's the point, Marcus said. You never tried to. Edward's mouth worked, grasping for footing. You have to understand. I deal with all kinds daily. Some cause trouble, some scam. I thought. You thought I didn't belong, Marcus cut in. And you made sure I knew it. I can learn from this, Edward said, voice thin. Training, a suspension, whatever you need. I've got a family, years here. You served your ambition, Marcus said, standing, his shadow long. Not our values. You taught your team that courtesy is conditional. That ends now. Edward rose, desperation breaking through. You're making a mistake. This could stay quiet. The press doesn't need this. We both lose. Marcus's gaze was ice. I'm not here to negotiate. So that's it. Edward's voice cracked. Fired? Effective immediately, Marcus said. Notice by end of day. Email deactivated. Security will escort you out. Edward's face twisted. You're wrong. This isn't over. I'll sue. I'll talk. You'll regret this. Marcus said nothing, just watched as Edward stormed out, the glass door shuddering behind him. The room stilled, but Marcus's resolve burned brighter than ever. Edward didn't waste time. By nightfall, he'd spun his story to a blog hungry for scandal. Fired manager claims, CEO discrimination. The headline spread like wildfire, amplified by social media's outrage machine. Some cried reverse racism, others decried corporate overreach. Edward's narrative, loyal worker betrayed, gained traction. But Marcus stayed silent, letting the storm rage. Behind closed doors, his legal team was ironclad. He's filing, the lead counsel said, sliding a draft across the table. Wrongful termination, retaliation, discrimination. Let him, Marcus said, eyes on the paper. We have enough to end this. We could settle, the attorney offered, quietly. I want accountability, Marcus said, voice final. Edward's lawyer, a media shark, hit cable news, framing it as David versus Goliath. But Marcus didn't bite. His team gathered evidence, footage, staff statements, guest logs, building a case that didn't need headlines, only truth. Clara's press statement was a masterstroke of restraint. Kane and Crown confirms the termination following review. We don't comment on legal matters, but remain committed to excellence and equity. No noise, just steel. The hotel, meanwhile, was changing. Laura Jensen, the new manager, didn't preach. She listened, met staff one-on-one, tweaked policies with surgical care. Walk-ins were greeted, not judged. The lobby felt lighter, less like a fortress. Clara visited, blending in, watching the shift. Not perfect, but real. At headquarters, Marcus dug deeper, questioning hiring, promotions, culture. Anonymous reviews rolled out, diverse voices amplified. The board listened, not just to profits, but to people. Change wasn't loud, it was permanent. The courtroom was stark, unyielding, beige walls, worn carpet, a judge's bench that loomed without grandeur. Edward entered like a man on a mission, suit crisp, face composed, but his defiance was fraying. His lawyer spun a tale of a scapegoated worker, but the jury's eyes were on the screen. The footage played. Marcus, calm, dismissed. Edward, cold, unyielding. Then the second visit. Same story, sharper sting. The receptionist testified, voice shaking but clear. There was a rule about who we welcomed. The bellhop echoed her. We were told to watch, not help. Edward's testimony crumbled under scrutiny. I thought he was loitering, he said, but the jury saw no threat, only bias. His lawyer's final plea, years of service, one mistake, felt hollow against the truth. Marcus's attorney was surgical. This wasn't a mistake, it was a mindset. The jury didn't need more. They saw. The verdict came fast. In favor of the defendant, the foreman said. Termination justified. Damages denied. Edward sank into his chair, the fight draining from him. Marcus stood, nodded to Clara, and left without a word. The truth had spoken. 3 days later, Marcus sat in a studio, lights soft, camera steady. No script, no pomp, just him, speaking to his people. I walked into our hotel as a guest, he said, voice like a tide, and was profiled. Twice. Not for what I did, but for how I looked. He leaned forward, eyes burning. This isn't about one man. It's about who we are. Racism has no place here. Not in whispers, not in smiles. If you think power lets you judge, we will find you, and you will go. The room held its breath. Hospitality is service, not gatekeeping. It's dignity, given freely to everyone. We're reviewing every location, every voice. If you've been silenced, we're listening. He ended with a vow. We will be better, starting now. The red light faded, and Clara nodded from the shadows. The work was just beginning. At the hotel, spring air carried hope. Marcus returned, coat sharp, stride sure. The doorman nodded, not servile, but respectful. Laura greeted him, pride in her eyes. We've changed, she said. I see it, Marcus replied. He walked the lobby, no longer a stranger. Staff worked, not for show, but for purpose. The bulletin board held his speech, marked by those who'd heard. In the staff room, he spoke. Culture is built in moments. You've weathered a storm. Now we build better. Together, he left as he came. Alone, steady, seen not for his suit, but for his stand. The work wasn't done, but the promise was alive. Loved this? Share it, subscribe, and let's keep the story going.